don't think it surprises me much. And the only reason is the Nuggets number was, at 8.5, 9, those first two games. I don't necessarily see, although, Miami did go out and first off, they came out like game busters in game two, and then got way behind and then made their way back and ultimately won. But, it was an impressive win. I wouldn't have been surprised if this was more like a pick, Nick, but, pick, comma, Nick, not picnic.
Yeah.
But being that the number was 8.5, 9, I think BetMGM even visited 9.5 briefly for game two, very briefly. It came back pretty quickly and ultimately went all the way down to 7.5, I think, before the game tipped off. I'm not too surprised that it's basically Nuggets by a bucket. It's practically a pick 'em when you're talking that, a 3-point shot away. So I'm not surprised to see the Nuggets a slight favorite. If the number had been a little lower for games 1 and 2, and we'd had the similar results, I think I would have expected to see pick 'em or maybe even the Heat lay in a point or two.
On All-Star Weekend, he won the skills competition. And that dude's like 6'10". He has a very unique skill set. Not like Nikola Jokic, but the fact that he is even somewhat going toe-to-toe with that guy, again, I think that Jimmy Butler is obviously, if he goes out there and plays like he has during this postseason, it's going to be hard to beat them. But Bam Adebayo is the difference between that team winning and losing basketball games really this entire postseason, right? Like if you break it down with a microscope game by game, Jimmy goes off for 35. What did Bam do? If you look at Bam, most of those games where he had a double-double, his team ends up winning those type of games. So as much as I think Jamal Murray is important, I don't mind the shot that he got at the end of the game. I think it was fine. I think Bam is probably the third most important player in this entire series.
Phil's going to show up to his U.S. media veil like a peacock. Like D'Lo Brown, if you guys liked old wrestling. Like he will literally strut that walk to that podium at the U.S. Open next week, I have no doubt. Rory, he's got a 7 a.m. Pro-Am tee time tomorrow in Toronto, and then he is scheduled in quotations, to speak to the media after. I'll be interested to see if he even does and what he would say. But all those guys, they put their neck out for the tour, and it feels like it had their legs cut out from under them. Some offshores had Jay Monahan to resign by the end of the year at 8-1. They opened it by like the time I checked at the end of the day, it was like plus 175.
Wow.
Hockey fans like hate Gary Bettman. Owners love him for whatever reason. He makes them a lot of money. In golf, it is the players who own the tour. Rory owns the tour. Spieth owns the tour. Rahm owns the tour. They're the owners of this thing. And they were loyal to it. And now it seems like that it stabbed them in the back in some way. What the make good could be, no question. A guy like Hideki Matsuyama, LIV probably offered him as much or more than some of these huge American stars just to get into the Japan market. Some of these guys, their heads must be spinning tonight.
Right on pace is what Kyle Shanahan said. I think he throws 3 times a week. He didn't sit and watch all of them, but the process to getting back, he's right on the end. And on top of that, you got John Lynch saying that he's going to be right in the mix to be the starter. This is happening. Brock Purdy is viewed, according to NBC Sports in the Bay Area, by the way, as the, quote, clear favorite to open the season as the 49ers starting quarterback. If they can just get consistency at that position with everything else they do well and still being considered one of the Super Bowl favorites in San Francisco, this 49ers team can beat anybody in the NFL, but they've got to get consistency at quarterback.
LIV was only around for 5 minutes, right? Like, dude, does anybody really know what LIV was? It feels like they were a teenager with braces, right? They were awkward. They were still trying to figure themselves out. And the next thing we know, bam. It feels to me like what just happened is probably 3 years from now. It's going to take a little bit of time. Feelings are going to get hurt. Money's got to change hands. Sponsors have to decide if all that stuff has to figure itself out. But I think what the big news about what happened today is I think it goes kind of back to what it was. I think now we're going to kind of have a governing body. I think we're going to have all these different organizations coming together. And yeah, we, like you point out, And John said, we might see a little bit of difference. We might see a little bit of spin-off here and there. But I think basically golf 3 years from now is going to look a lot like golf did 3 years ago.
I didn't expect it this soon, but I thought this was inevitable. And like I said, the last 2 chapters in my book on David Feherty are on LIV and on his decision to go there. So last July, when I was wrapping up the book, we discussed this in great detail and why he decided to do it, and there are a bunch of reasons. But what he said at that time, because he got a 5-year contract from LIV for a hell of a lot of money, and he said at some point there's going to have to be a merger. And he felt that it wasn't that big a gamble for him to go to LIV, A, because he knew the Saudis were good for the money, and B, because sooner or later everybody has to play together again. And they will play together again, and it will be good for golf to have, it hasn't been good for golf that Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau, even though he's a jerk, haven't been playing in any regular PGA Tour events for a year now. So it will be ultimately better for the game this way, except for the fact that they will be the commissioner of golf now is Salman bin Mohammed. I mean, he's the boss now, and that's not good for golf. But long term, yes, it probably will, because we all want to see the best players play each other. Tennis, we want to see Alcaraz play Djokovic, right? And that's what makes sports, is those rivalries and that sort of competition. Monahan's making a big deal about applying for reinstatement. So let's say the tour says, okay, you can come back. You got to pay $100,000 or $500,000 to come back. That's like asking the three of us to pay $10 to come back to something.
Yeah,
it's nothing. Yeah. I mean, Rory, remember McIlroy? I hate to keep bringing him up, but he decided not to play at Hilton Head this year because he was upset. On memo to Steve Elkington, because he was upset about the way he played in the Masters, and he was fined $3 million. And again, it's like if I got fined $30 or maybe $300, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I got fined $3 million. When do I play next?" And so all these guys, they're going to be reinstated. Part of the reason why Monahan did fold on this was because he knows he's got to get all the best players in the world playing together again. That was bad for the entire sport. And, they're going to come back in and laugh their way back onto the PGA Tour. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic in the locker room, though.